Item number 4 is a briefing on Mesa County's proposed fiscal year 2026 budget. We have Diane Juitkowski, budget manager this morning, and Todd Hollenbeck.
Diane Juitkowski, budget manager. And today we have for you the proposed fiscal year 2026 budget for Mesa County. And I want to give you just an overview of the process up to this point. So we start the budget process back in April, May timeframe with some preliminary revenue forecasting. And really that helps us get an idea of what resources are available to us for the upcoming budget. And that really drives a lot of the decisions that we make during the budget process. And so after we get an idea around the revenue situation, we have our budget kickoff in June, where we submit guidance out to departments on how to put their budgets together. And they have a budget submittal period. And after that, we met individually with departments this year to go over budget challenges, as well as propose increases or decreases to their budgets. And then after all of that, we come up with this draft version of the budget, which is the proposed budget. And there will be some changes between now and the official adopted budget in December, as we receive more information over the next couple of months about some of our revenue sources, as well as going through our budget appeals process. But that's kind of a look at what it's been up to this point.
Yeah, commissioners, as you'll remember, prior to the kickoff of the budget process, we started our strategic planning process. And so that went back, started probably as early as March, maybe even a little bit sooner, where we had interviews with our departments to look at the existing strategic plan, which had good bones, strong foundation. But we also knew that we had new leadership in various roles, whether that was in elected roles or department head roles. We need to make an update. And so that all came together with a day-and-a-half retreat at the end of April, beginning of May. And it was an opportunity for us really to take that strategic plan, create a new one, refresh it, if you will, given the information that we currently had, the challenges that we were currently facing, as well as the experience that we had had from the previous plan, and tie it all together. And ideally, it came out alongside we were able to roll that out alongside of our 2026 budget process when we kicked that off. And so really that allowed us to align our goals as we look forward to 26. This budget process, if you'll look at it, really focuses on people, infrastructure, and stewardship. We've got the foundation, the foundation really that helps to make Mesa County the best place to live, work, and play. And I think that one of those key focus points for us is always our Team Mesa, right? It was said earlier, it's our team is our biggest asset, our greatest strength. And so with that, we're looking to propose $3.5 million investment into our workforce, continuing to identify and move our employees up a step, if you will. That's effectively what that means. And so we want to make sure that we're staying consistent with all the challenges, opportunities that we have in delivering the best service possible for not only internal services, but to our residents. We are proposing, I do want to make a note here that we are proposing to keep the freeze through 2026 at this point. We're still projecting some flat revenues, sales tax, and impacts on the grant side, both from federal, state side that are impacting our budget. So we want to make sure that we're aware of that and that we're handling that responsibly. So right now, the proposal does identify that we would continue that freeze through 26. At the same time, that's also going to allow us to do a few things. As we get into 2026, it's going to allow us to work closely with our departments regarding those core services that they provide. We can also look at it in terms of strategic right sizing based on what funding opportunities that our departments may be seeing, as well as impacts that they may be seeing. I think the other part that we want to continue to focus on with all of this, though, is continuity of operations and public safety. as we've done to date. There are some big things that are coming out of with the 2026 budget process. We're seeing some innovation, some creativity, a lot of good collaboration as a result. When times get a little bit tougher, that pressure is put on you, and it's amazing the innovation that comes out as a result of it. One of those areas, obviously, the Public Works Department, engineering, they're seeing some great success in revenues on getting grants to the tune of about $7 million total. That's going to be about $27 million and dedicated to road and bridge projects this next year. Diane will talk a little bit more specifically about some of those projects in a little bit as she gets further into her presentation. They will continue, road and bridge will continue their 1 million annual in surface treatments. But I also want to make a note here that road and bridge is doing some really creative things as well. They're looking at preventative maintenance reallocation, where they're reducing our gravel by 30% so that they can double down on crack seal work, as well as applying 50% more asphalt within each of our districts. So that's extremely creative. They're doing some great things. I do also want to make a note that that doesn't help to solve the problem, right? We're putting a Band-Aid. We're keeping good roads in good shape, but it's not the ideal solution for a longer term, because they're going to continue to feel those impacts. At the same time, they are preserving or recommending a dedicated preservation group. This would be 3 FTEs that we would put out that would be funded through the Highway User Tax Fund. And they would run the sweepers, vector operations, a vacuum truck, if you will. They would work on culverts and bridge care and really stay out ahead to address some of the preventative maintenance care or issues that they're seeing on the maintenance side. That'll help them get ahead and just improve their efficiency and the external life of the infrastructure that we have. At the same time, we're seeing some work within IT, number of software upgrades that we're doing within the assessor, treasurer's office, as well as criminal justice services. Facilities is also looking at things on the preventive maintenance side. They're handling a number of HVAC units to the tune of about $3 million and $2 million roughly in deferred maintenance. So a lot of preventative maintenance, a lot of getting out there, maintaining what we have and putting it in better shape, as well as there will be the ongoing work for the Justice Center that we currently have under design as well. So that'll continue into 2026.
All right, so jumping into the numbers, here I have for you high-level gross figures. So this includes transfers and charges between departments for internal services. So it's really all-encompassing of Mesa County budget. And I have a 2025 adopted budget comparison to 2026 proposed, just so you can kind of see the changes year over year. And I do want to mention that we did have a significant change that you'll see between 2025 and 2026. We had tax exempt lease purchase financing in 2025, about $9 million that went towards energy efficiency upgrades across Mesa County facilities. And so that was pulled out of the 2026 budget. So about $9 million on revenues and expenditure side. So that's going to be one of the big differences there. But I do want to give you an overview of some of our major revenue sources and what those are looking like going into 2026. So property taxes, our growth in property taxes is subject to both state and Tabor limitations. And so right now we're projecting, based on the Tabor allowable growth, 2.3% in inflation and 1.1% in local growth. So around 3.5% is what we're projecting for property tax growth in 2026. And that is just a projection right now. We will receive the final assessed values from the assessor's office late November. And so that'll allow us to finalize the mill levy, as well as what the actual property tax revenues will look like in 2026. For sales tax, sales tax makes up about 30% of our total revenue, and that does include public safety sales tax. But the growth in sales tax over the last few years has trended pretty flat. Right now, we're looking at about 1.5% growth versus last year. And so that is what I'm forecasting out into 2026 as the growth factor for sales tax. And we will watch that trend for the remainder of the year and update that forecast as needed for the adopted budget. All of that growth in our largest general revenue sources is going to be offset by decreases in intergovernmental revenue. So the volatility around federal funding as well as a state budget deficit, it creates uncertainty around what level of funding we can expect in 2026. And so we are trying to be conservative in forecasting that revenue in the budget, but most departments are forecasting a decrease in those revenue sources going into 2026. And again, that's something that we'll also watch throughout the end of the year and make updates to the budget come the adopted budget in December. On the expenditure side of things, Todd did talk about some of the high level initiatives that we're budgeting for in 2026. I do want to emphasize that throughout the budget process, we work to prioritize those values and goals that are laid out in the strategic plan. But due to those preliminary revenue forecasts that we do early on in the budget process, and based on that outlook, we did introduce an expenditure reduction effort that was undertaken by all departments. So the goal was 10% in reductions for departmental budgets. And a lot of our departments tried to meet those reduction efforts where they could. And that did provide us with savings across all funds, especially in the general fund. In addition to the reductions to the departmental budgets, we also implemented the hiring freeze this year, which we have budgeted for that continuation into 2026. And that's a very fluid situation. So depending on how cash reserves look, you can always adjust the hiring freeze as needed or make changes to that based on how our services are doing. And so we are defunding a number of positions through that hiring freeze. And we also froze the positions for the individuals that participated in that voluntary staff reduction program that we had earlier in the year. So we did realize some savings from that. However, these savings were offset by some anticipated increases in the budget due to inflationary pressures or expected increases in contracts or software contracts. So we did see some offset of the savings. As Todd mentioned, we did include an allocation towards employee compensation and allocating some resources there to move our employees forward a step. We are budgeting for a 10% increase in health insurance premiums right now. We are in the process of an RFP to change our health plan and hopefully identify savings over the next couple of years while still being able to offer a good plan to our staff. And so as we finish up that RFP throughout the end of this year, we'll have those updated health insurance premium numbers for the adopted budget. We also have a placeholder for a 10% increase in our other insurance premiums. So liability, property, auto. And again, we'll also get the final numbers for that later in November. So we'll have them for the adopted budget. I did want to point out on the slide here for you, obviously you can see revenues, 240.6 million, expenditures, 264.8 million. So as I mentioned, we did have that decrease versus 2025, mostly attributable to that TELP financing that's come out of the budget. But I do want to point out the net change, the budget deficit. So we do anticipate using some fund balance in a few of our funds, mainly the general fund. But I did want to point out that a big chunk of this use of fund balance is also due to the capital fund. So in 2025, we had budgeted for certain projects and we were unable to commit that to contracts in 2025. And so basically it falls into fund balance. And so we are going to be adding those contracts to 2026 instead. But a big drawdown of the fund balance is just the rollover of those projects year over year. So it's a little confusing, but I did want to point that out as one of the big drivers behind that deficit when you're looking at the total funds.
Where are Tabor refunds coming out of?
I'm sorry?
We have a Tabor refund we're sending out next year as well, right?
Yes, and I will get to that in
Okay,
this one.
sounds good.
So moving on to the general fund. So the general fund is over a third of the county budget. It supports 22 departments and functions, and all of our elected officials operate out of this fund. So that's where you're going to see a lot of the largest impacts to the overall budget. And so here I have for you a comparison, 2025 adopted budget to the 2026 proposed budget. And with the general fund, we talk a lot about fund balance and the importance of keeping a safety net to fund operations in the event that we have revenue shortfalls. And so beginning of the year 2025, we had a beginning fund balance of 26.9 million, a very healthy fund balance for the general fund. We did anticipate through the 2025 adopted budget to draw that down by about $8 million to an ending balance of 18.8 million. Right now I'm forecasting about a $7 million drawdown in fund balance instead. And that is a projection, but it's due to the cash saving measures that we're taking, such as the hiring freeze and other things that we're doing. So I anticipate us starting 2026 around 19.9 million. So that's the reason for the difference that you see there. And so we do have in the 2026 proposed budget, $90.5 million in revenues, 98.6 million in expenditures for an additional drawdown of that fund balance. And as I mentioned, with things like the hiring freeze, that's like a fluid situation. And so the benefit from that can be adjusted throughout 2026 as needed, depending on how those cash reserves are doing. And I do want to mention that the budget deficit in both 2026 and 2025, that is really just due to the growth in our expenditures outpacing the growth in our revenues or lack thereof of growth, which I'm going to go through here. So the revenues, as I mentioned, 90.5 million, a change of a decrease of 1.4 million versus 2025. And so with property tax, we are forecasting growth 3.5% year over year. And that is a conservative growth factor, but we will finalize that before the end of the year. Property tax is about $26 million worth in the general fund. And so we are going to be issuing a $2 million Tabor refund through
What was
property.
the amount?
I'm sorry?
What was the amount?
2 million.
2 million.
Yep. And so the $2 million is due to over collection of revenue in 2024. So $2 million will be refunded through property tax credits. So that will directly reduce our mill levy, but we are going to be covering that Tabor refund through our capital fund. So we'll be transferring funds to the general fund to cover that refund.
So the last few years, we've given them out in checks. And so I guess the question is going to be, why not checks this year? And if you do a quick math, it's probably because they're going to be about $18 checks this year. So this year that we're going to do it through a property.
Right. It's a
credit.
much smaller refund this
Yeah.
year, and the cost of doing the checks, there's also a cost to that, but yeah, it would be very, very small checks that we would be issuing with just a $2 million refund.
Okay.
And so sales tax, as I mentioned, revenues are about 1.5% growth year over year. So that in the general fund, it's about 300 to 400,000 impact to revenues. We also have some growth in some of our other general revenue sources. So use, ownership, and other taxes, interest on investments. So about 400 to 500,000 there. Similar to what I mentioned the last slide, all of these increases in general revenues are being largely offset by decreases in our state and federal funding. So the uncertainties surrounding that, we are trying to budget conservatively. So $1.5 million decrease in federal grants, $1 million decrease in state grants expected in 2026. And We will see if we have any new information before the end of the year, but we are trying to budget conservatively for that. We would rather have more revenues anticipated rather than over budgeting for that. In addition, the state, it seems, will be retaining severance tax that's normally given to local governments. And so that is a $1 million impact to the Mesa County General Fund. On the expenditure side of things, $98.6 million, also a $1.4 million decrease versus 2025. And so, as I mentioned, we forecast revenues early in the budget process. That allows us to understand what resources we have, especially in the general fund. And that drove a lot of the decisions that we made during the budget process. And so due to that revenue outlook, we had that 10% budget reduction for departments, which did realize savings in the general fund. The hiring freeze, we were budgeting for that in 2026. And as I mentioned, those are being offset by some increased costs in some of our contracts, a new software that we have. Over half of our employees are in the general fund. So when you talk about things like health insurance premiums, half of that impacts in the general fund, as well as the increased compensation for employees, about $1.8 million impact to the general fund. And so we still need to finalize some of these numbers as we get closer to December. Things like the health insurance or the other insurance premiums, we'll get those final numbers, as well as finalizing the property tax piece. So this is, as I mentioned, a draft version, and we do anticipate a few changes between now and December. Any questions about the general fund?
What was the request for expenses in 2026? And how much did we have to cut to get to the 98.6?
So there weren't very many requests because of the 10% budget reduction. But when I put the initial first, we call it the base budget together for 2026, we had over $14 million deficit. So combined savings plus increases got us down to $8 million deficit. So we definitely had a lot of changes that were made. A lot of departments made some good cuts. And so I think that really helped us get to where we are at right now.
Okay, and you'll go over the capital fund here too, or?
Yes, I'll do
Okay,
that next.
thank you.
Or in 2 slides. So our authorized staffing level, the FTE count for the county, really not changing much. As Todd mentioned, we are adding 3 FTE to our road and bridge department. That's the last line on here. But really all these other changes that I have, it's just reorganization of FTEs across departments. So Animal Services is getting an FTE from Criminal Justice Services. County Attorney's Office is getting an FTE from District Attorney. And then we have some reorganization around our newly created Natural Resources Department. So we are moving the Parks Division, 9 FTEs, out of our Facilities Department and moving that to Natural Resources. And then 5 FTEs for our Trails crew. They right now are under Public Health, so we're moving those to Natural Resources as well. But just a 3 FTE growth due to those 3 preservation crew members that we're adding. And I do want to mention that through the hiring freeze, we do have a lot of FTEs that have been defunded at this time, including those 10 positions that were frozen for the voluntary staff reduction program. So the funding's frozen, but as I mentioned, that is fluid, so we can, if we find that we need funding for an FTE, we can always add that back during a budget supplemental next year if it's needed. And so moving on to the capital improvement plan. This is a high-level overview of that plan, which we actually put together this budget, not just for 2026, but also for 5 additional out years. So a total of 6 years included in this capital plan. And the reason behind that is just the nature of these projects. They are very large dollar contracts, multi-year, sometimes multi-phase projects. And so having a 6-year plan really helps us better account for when certain projects are starting, ending, and it just helps for an overall better informed budgeting process. And so here on the left-hand side of the screen, I have just the 2026 numbers for you. So revenues, 46.6 million, and that is made up of mostly sales tax, about $36 million in sales tax for the capital fund. The remaining portion of that is going to be other state and federal funding that we have committed for projects in 2026. As Todd mentioned, Public Works has almost $7 million in funding coming in for projects in 2026. On the expenditure side, $57.3 million. And as I mentioned, the use of fund balance is actually some of those high dollar projects that are rolling over for 2025 into the 2026 budget. And so it's actually, when you take those out, it is a balanced budget. And I do just want to highlight, as Todd mentioned, some of the larger projects that we have funds allocated for in 2026. So IT, 2.5 million in software replacements, upgrades and maintenance. Public Works, $7 million in revenues to support projects such as road improvements, investments in bridge improvements, as well as just general road maintenance. Our facilities has right now $3 million investment in upgrading the HVAC systems, $2 million in asset preservation, as well as funds planned for expanding the Justice Center. On the right-hand side of the screen, I have just a high-level look at what the total capital budget looks like for the full 6 years. So almost $268 million planned for the next 6 years. And this breakout doesn't really change much year over year. As you can see, Transportation and Public Works Department is over half. And that's driven by the number of projects and just the large cost of those projects. Of the remaining portions, maintenance, renovation, and new construction on county facilities and assets. So IT, facilities, fleet, that's about 22%. And I do just want to point out that the miscellaneous section here, that does include payments on debt, transfers to some of our public improvement districts, capital contributions to other entities, and that kind of items fall under miscellaneous. And so just an overview of the remainder of the process. So today we're presenting the proposed budget, and it will be available on the Mesa County website under the budget page. Moving into November, we'll start our budget appeals process where departments can appeal to the board for anything that didn't get included in the proposed budget. We'll also work to finalize our operating and capital budgets. The capital budget does change quite a bit throughout the year as we finalize projects. We'll also finalize the operating budget as new information comes available regarding economic and revenue outlook for 2026, and we'll get those final insurance numbers. And then we'll finalize property tax and mill levy calculation with the final assessed values late in November. And then we will be back here on December 9th to certify mill levies and adopt the final budget for 2026.
Okay. Commissioners, do you guys have any questions on this item? And before we do that, Todd, Star, we don't have to take any action on this item. This is simply a briefing. Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments on this item?
Yeah, the only, I guess, comments that I would mention, I really feel confident in the process as a commissioner. This is my first year. I feel a sense of calmness that you've really done the due diligence to present this budget and talking about the strategic plan and how we worked through this in the past months to derive where we're at today. I'd like to mention, you know, you talk about projections of sales tax growth and also property tax growth. And I know there was an editorial over the weekend in the paper by a former public health director of Mesa County talking about looking towards the future of Mesa County and protecting what we have, what we value most. And I know we made a concern or an effort to keep our valley clean, but I know that we need to strategically continue to work towards those goals through implementation of our law enforcement partners and community people. Had a meeting yesterday with people that are concerned about their property tax values, whether they go up or down. They're concerned that they're going to go down because of what we're seeing in our community with the homeless camps and the trash and the unsightly surroundings. So I just want to make sure that we protect those interests.
Commissioner Daniel?
Thank you. Yes, this budget has been a long time coming. We knew that with the state in the situation that they're in, even just going into the year at a $1.2 billion deficit, we were local government was going to have to pick up a lot of the slack, and here we are. And I think we have done a good job in Mesa County to save for that rainy day. And today is that rainy day. And we've been projecting this taking place. We knew inflation was a major problem for us. And really, we're tasked with doing more with less. And I'm really want to extend my gratefulness to our staff and all of our department heads. When we asked for that 10% reduction, our team really came together, and I couldn't be more proud of the innovation from our team, the teamwork. We don't operate in silos. We're working together, and there's so much efficiencies that are gained when we do that. And so I just wanted to make sure that our staff is recognized, and our department heads and those folks making some of those tougher decisions were recognized. And again, the hiring freeze, I think, definitely helps. The voluntary reduction was, we saw that as a way to make sure that we could do more with less and really take care of our employees. So I just wanted to convey those thoughts. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Daniel. Tough year. It's not easy budgeting in these types of years. A lot of different priorities, 32 different departments, a lot of nonprofits and community partners, from GJAP to the museum, and all of them giving us bigger requests this year. So tough year. I know you guys have done your best to try to take a limited pie and serve all the needs in our community, using our strategic plan to prioritize. Not done, obviously. We've got a process we're going to go through. We go through appeals and different stuff, but appreciate the work and effort you put into this. Dan, I know you start probably in like February, March on this process. You're a full-time budget manager, so thank you for all the effort and time you've put into this as well. Although we're not taking any action on this, I did want to open it up to the public and see the public had any comments, questions on this item this morning. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this briefing item this morning? Okay. Seeing none, we'll wrap up this item. No action is needed.